To another Perspectives from the Sky. I think we're going to go a little longer today. Usually we end at an hour. I think we're going to go close to an hour and a half. I'll be speaking for a while. Deborah, of course, will be speaking later. And we have a special guest today, author Candace Lynn Talmadge. I'll give you a more full description of her when we get to interviewing her. But just in general, she's an author who writes these wonderful books that take in her own past lives in the fictionalized series of her books. Really interesting, really deep, spiritual. We'll find out more in about half an hour when we talk to Candace. So now let's talk about the planetary stuff. So right now we are close to entering the second quarter of the lunar cycle. The first quarter began at the new moon in Scorpio. And that was a pretty powerful new moon. It was conjunct Mars in Scorpio and opposite Uranus and Taurus. So there's a lot of like deep, intense energies around. I mean, those energies from that new moon are still close to one another, those planets. And so the intensity level is high. The ability for healing is extremely high. The ability to go deep with insight is extremely high. The ability to transform, letting go of the old forms, moving into new forms is very high. So transformation, especially of any kind, is likely, even if you're not paying attention to a desire for transformation. It's happening in big ways, and it's going to continue into 2024. This is not a quick fix kind of a thing. We're doing deep work. All of us are moving from an old chapter of our lives into a new chapter of our lives. And I'm talking on a personal level, but also on a global level. And of course, I know you can see it on a global level. I mean, take a look what this last year has been like. Last couple of years, actually. In fact, if you want to, we could take it back to 2020 when the COVID came. But it's been especially transformational over these last couple of years. And 2024 will top the cake. It'll be the most powerful of the transformational recent years. So let's go through right now, and then let me take you through the ages a little bit so we get the bigger perspective. So I've talked a lot about how we've moved into the age of Aquarius. And the date I gave it was winter solstice 2020. On that date, Saturn and Jupiter made conjunction at 0+ degrees of Aquarius. To me, it was a message from the universe that the age of Aquarius has begun. Then, early this year, 2023, Pluto moved out of Capricorn and into Aquarius. And the last time Pluto has been in Aquarius was from 1777 to 1797. What were those years? Those years were the years of the Revolutionary War, and also a lot of those years were about the French Revolution that was going on. Also during those years, the planet Uranus was discovered in 1781, which is the ruling planet of Aquarius. So if you want to know what Uranus is about, and you want to know what Aquarius is about, and you want to know what Pluto in Aquarius for these next, you'll keep in mind that Pluto has not been in Aquarius since then. Pluto was in Aquarius from 1777 to 1797, and now this is the next time, because Pluto moves that slowly. Its cycle is like 248 years approximately. So that's why it happened then, and now it's happening now for the next 20 years. So it's going to be until 2044 that Pluto stays in Aquarius. So what happened in 1777 to 1797? Like I said, those two revolutionary wars, but they weren't about the war. They were about the principles behind the war. The principle was breaking away from dictators, kings, queens, oppressive governments, and mostly about of the people, by the people, for the people. That's what was going on. That's the reason for both of those revolutions, is so the people could say, which makes sense, think about it. Why should the world belong to people that have the most money or the most power? Does that make any sense on a human level? Makes absolutely no sense for the people that are going to run the world to be the most ruthless and greedy. Sorry, that's what I feel. So when we, the people, inherit the earth, so to speak, it's great in one way. That's like a lot of freedom and no one telling us what to do but ourselves. But it also means taking responsibility for ourselves and the world we live in a way we never have done before. I think one of the reasons that we humans have given away our power to these power-hungry people is because we did not feel like we were capable of taking taking responsibility is a big thing. It's like making commitments. That kind of energy is not easy. People would rather oftentimes let somebody else make the decisions. They may complain about those decisions, but they prefer the other people making the decisions because they don't have too much pressure on themselves. So we're breaking away from that. So remember, 1777 to 1797. So what happened before that is that the planet Pluto, which was at the very end of Capricorn, came back to itself over these last couple of years. What do I mean by came back to itself? Pluto in the United States chart was at 27 plus degrees of Capricorn, and now Pluto has come back to 27 plus degrees of Capricorn. And it just changed directions at that exact degree of Capricorn in October. So we're moving toward the last year of the Pluto return, but we're also moving into the actual first couple of years of Pluto in Aquarius. So what happened besides those revolutionary wars during that time, 1777 to 1797? Those two countries settled into a whole new way of being. The United States I have more knowledge of. So the United States elected their first president, George Washington, in 1789, and he stayed president from 1789 to 1797. So he kind of brought on, or he was instrumental in making the revolution real and grounded in reality through his presidency. So those 20 years were the war and then the instituting of the principles of the revolution. So now with Pluto back in Aquarius for the first time since then, it's time to bring us to those principles again. Let's take it back a little further. Remember, this is a changing of ages. So when did the last age start? The one we're in now. It started, all ages are approximately 2,160 years long. So if we take that back, we take ourselves to maybe 100 to 200 BC, right in that range. So one of the big things that happened during this age, the Pisces age, that we're now have left, is prophets, spiritual figures, new religions. Buddha was born like 500 or 600 BC. Lao Tzu was born around the same time. Confucius was born around the same time. Christ was born at that changing from BC to AD, when things started going the other direction on the years. And then Muhammad was born in 600 AD. So if you take from about 500 or 600 BC to about 500 or 600 AD, all of these major spiritual prophets and figures lived. That's a lot of what the Pisces age was meant to be. And now you could say, oh my God, look at these religions. They're, my God's better than your God. I'm going to kill you. That's what's happened to a lot of those religions. Look at the Middle East. That's what they're saying there, pretty much underneath it all. So we don't want to get into that. It's time to leave that age because it's no longer representative of the prophets who brought those religions in with the pure spiritual values. It's become rules, regulations, guilt, etc. Again, this is why we, the people, it's our world to claim and to own and to take responsibility for now. And that's what these next 20 years are gonna be like. And you say, how's that gonna happen? Leo, take a look at it. How's it gonna come to we the people? People aren't even protesting that much right now. Here's how it's gonna happen. So not pretty is how it's gonna happen some of the time. You can see when you look at America right now, you can see that there's, from the inside, there's a culture war going on. From the outside, we're getting involved in a lot of foreign wars with a lot of our money. Next year, it's not only going to be our money, it's going to be our actual involvement. Next year will be World War. And at the same time that there's World War, there's going to be inner conflict. That culture war is going to heat up even more than it's been. And you can see that when you take a look at the fact that there's an election that comes at the end of 2024. So it's not too hard to predict that that's going to come to a heated place. So from the inside and from the outside, our world is transforming. But this is the whole world is transforming. The old structures, the old geopolitical structures are not working for the world. I mean, they're really not working for the world. So they need to go. And the way that it's happening now is one of the ways that it's going to go. And the economy is going to go with that. Remember, Pluto in the United States chart is in Capricorn in the second house. Remember, we have a Pluto return and Pluto's going into Aquarius. Pluto represents, in the United States chart, the military industrial complex. And it's that military industrial complex that's in the beginning process of transforming. So you can see what's going to happen. So when I tell you next year, I'm really serious about next year. The big highlight for next year will be a total solar eclipse in Aries on April 8th. And that eclipse is going to be, its passage is going to be across the United States. And whenever you see where an eclipse is happening, that's where you know that a lot of the events that are going to happen in the world are going to be in that place in the world. So it's going to travel across the United States from the southwest all the way up to Maine is where that eclipse is going to go. Now, the last time there was a total solar eclipse was in August of 2017. And interestingly, because it doesn't happen very often, what I'm going to say, that one was traveling across the United States too, exclusively. So we have the one in 2017 and now the one in 2024 are both total solar eclipses traveling across the United States. That's its path. And it's in Aries. And Aries is ruling planet Mars. So that's going to be extremely an intense time. That's really going to kind of push us into new territory at that time. Now, also next year, and so good. Hi, Tameshka saying hi. Hi, Tameshka. Good to see you with us again in the chat box. So remember, the most important part of this transformation is in our hearts, in our minds, in our consciousness. That's where change really happens. Change happens from the inside out. So as we transform our consciousness, and you say, well, there's a whole lot of people that aren't transforming at all, Leo. What are you talking about? The events that are coming are going to help a lot of people to go through the similar transformation. For instance, a lot of the old paradigm, the old transformation is every man for himself, survival of the fittest. That's the way that evolution is looked at. If I'm tougher than you, then I'm going to survive. And if you're weak, you're not going to survive. And, that's how it goes. So there is a survival of the fittest. I'm not saying that there isn't. But the difference is that survival is now dependent on all of us being together in the same family. That's what's going to make us more fit than we've ever been before, is that we open our hearts and our minds to others. Remember, a lot of what the Age of Aquarius is diversity within unity. So it's everything and everyone being true to what they are, but at the same time that they're true to what they are, they make connection with all else. You know how even when you're in like an individual relationship, just you and your partner, or you and a friend, or you and a family member, and somebody says something to you, or you say something to the other person, and they just get really defensive, and then it escalates, and then there's nowhere to go. That's what happens out in the world. So in order for this transformation to work, people have to get to a place where they learn how to have more empathy. What I mean by that is, this is super difficult, but more and more people are getting closer to this because of the awareness of it. Instead of focusing on defending oneself in an argument, the transformation is, again, not easy. Really listen to where the other person's coming from. Really put yourself in their shoes. Make that what you concentrate on as opposed to defending yourself. And the more you can do that, the more we're all moving into this new consciousness together. That way we're all moving into a place of, like the yin yang symbol up above me, which I preach on all the time, I know, but I really believe that. It's like the more we don't see those that are different as out of the circle, the more we're going to evolve. It's like you can see the opposites are in the same circle, unified. There's diversity within unity right there, right in the yin yang symbol. Two entities totally different than one another, honored for what they are, but in the circle of unity. That's where we're moving in order to move into this new age consciousness, in order to move into this new age. And I know a lot of you say, well, I don't think it's going to happen. I do know it's going to happen. But next year's going to be a challenge. Next year's going to be a hell of a challenge. By the way, we're bringing on Candace in just about 10 minutes. So stay tuned for that. So, again, an age is 2,160 years. So when I say that it's not coming, but it's coming, the new consciousness, you can believe it because we have 2,160 years to get it together. Well, it's not going to take that long, but I'm saying it's not a rush. We don't have to be in the new consciousness immediately, although events in the world are going to push us to needing it sooner than later because we don't want to blow each other up or destroy one another, because with weapons of mass destruction, that's what the possibilities are. That's why the consciousness change has to happen. We have to change our consciousness. If people out in the world, instead of saying, whoever disagrees with me is the demon, they're wrong, they're evil, they're the demon, man, we got to get out of that. Don't you realize that when you're thinking about that, about the person or the country that you don't like or you don't agree with, don't you realize they're doing the same thing? They think we're the devil. Doesn't that put a light on? It's like That's why we need to change this consciousness. Stop demonizing those that disagree with us on on a personal level, and especially now on a global level. That's going to take us a long way. And what I think is going to happen is people are going to get scared enough to start making the changes. But I think we're going to get some help too. I've talked before on the air about ETs. And I still believe that there's going to be something there, because it so happens that now we have military people in the US and other countries who say that they've seen UFOs, or UAPs, I guess they're called, in the government level, UAPs, that they've seen these things happening. And what they've seen, some of them say, is that they hang out around nuclear weapon sites. They hang out at nuclear sites. If they are doing that, it's because they want to be a part of the solution. It's not because it's just the Earth. The Earth's a part of a whole universe. So whoever this is that's concerned is concerned about not just the Earth and the Earth people, but concerned about the universe itself. Blowing up a planet and the people on it is not going to help the universe any more than it's going to help the people on Earth. So I think there's a decent chance, and I'm not alone in this, that ETs will intervene when the time is right in order to bring us into the new consciousness and new age. 2024. So I'm going to give a talk on Saturday, January 20th. I'm going to talk about the year ahead in more detail. And then I'm also going to make some predictions on the presidential races at that time. I've done that before. I predicted that Obama would be nominated and then elected like the year before the election. I predicted, much to my chagrin, that Donald Trump would win the election in 2016, way before he had even gotten the nomination. So I've done this before, the Iraq War, also actually 9/11, partly unconscious and partly consciously, because what I did is Deborah and I had a newsletter that we put out called Spiritual Renaissance. And in that newsletter, I wrote that right before the summer of 2001, I wrote that the summer of 2001, and part of the reason I knew this was because there was a solar eclipse, new moon on the summer solstice. And then there were a lot of aspects to the United States chart the rest of that summer. So I wrote that something big was going to happen in the United States before the summer was over, 2001. But then the unconscious part was I put up a picture of a tower with people jumping out of the tower. What that was the tower card in tarot. Go figure. But I wasn't thinking that it was going to happen to the Twin Towers. That just came up out of me unconsciously. So I predicted something enormous was going to happen to the United States, and then put up this picture of the tower. If anyone wants to see that copy, I'll bring it on the air next time, or I'll put it somewhere that you can see it. But that's what happened. So on the 20th of January, I'm going to do a show talking about the new consciousness and about what's going to happen with the presidential races and other events that are going to happen next year. I will charge for that one. Usually I don't charge for these things, but I think I'm going to charge for that one. I don't know yet what. And then I'm probably going to follow it up with some classes, some soul astrology classes. So here's what's going on now. So that was the big picture and what's happening as we go on through next year. Again, remember where you are and what happens with you. You don't have to fret about or stress about. Just follow your lights. Follow your star. follow your higher self, whatever you want to call it. You'll be at the right places and the right times for you. Remember, when there was a world war, 2 of them, depression, all those things that happened to our ancestors not that many years ago, lots of people were like exceedingly happy during those years. In fact, in some cases, they were more happy than we are now. People got together. They made community. They did things with more care for one another during these rougher times. Take a look at us now. Sometimes you go out to neighborhoods, people don't even know who's across the street. They don't know who's next door to them. We've really gotten farther and farther away from one another. So perhaps these events are going to bring us closer and closer together, because part of what we need is the knowledge that we're all part of the same human family. A metaphor I like to use is, if you look at an orchestra, every single instrument in that orchestra, trumpet, violin, piano, is true. Of course it is. It's true to what it is and what it plays and what sounds it makes. But when the orchestra plays, all of those diverse instruments all come together to make beautiful music. That's what we're capable of as a human family, and that's what we'll get to in this age of Aquarius. A few more minutes, we're going to bring on Candace. So this week, as we move into the second quarter of the lunar cycle, remember the first quarter started last Monday with that new moon in Scorpio. So the second quarter starts this coming Monday. And at the same time, Mars will be sextile Pluto and Sun will be sextile Pluto. So this passage into the second quarter will have some intensity to it. So, just be aware that you'll feel more intensity and maybe more progress through your healing cycles too. Then on Wednesday, the long-awaited Sun in Sagittarius happens. Sagittarius is loved by many because Sagittarius, where Scorpio brings things down, people don't like that sometimes. They don't want to go down deep into things. Sometimes that feels more painful. They like being lifted up, and that's what Sagittarius does. So when does Sagittarius happen? Happens when the holidays happen, right? I mean, next week is Thanksgiving, next Thursday, right? So the Sun in Sagittarius happens on Wednesday, day before Thanksgiving. And then the whole holiday season, Sun is in Sagittarius. It goes into Capricorn on the 21st, the winter solstice. But for most of the holiday season, the Sun is in Sagittarius. We have a wonderful person that's going to be on today who's a Sagittarius. That is Deborah Knighton Tallarico. She's born on November 30th, and I know we'll be celebrating next week on that. So what's Sagittarius like? I mean, Sagittarius is like free-spirited, positive, optimistic, loves to be around inspiration, loves to bring people up. It's expansive. It likes to take the high road, so to speak, not the low road. Sometimes it can be out of control. Sometimes it can be way up and not notice what's going on in its body. Remember, look at the Sagittarius symbol. It's the centaur, right? So the centaur is like shooting up to the stars. That's mainly what Sagittarius is. But then look what's underneath that figure, that human figure that's shooting up to the stars. There's a horse there. And it's at the hip of the centaur that the horse starts. And Deborah will back me up on this as a Sagittarius. Oftentimes, the Sagittarius will be shooting up so high that they forget that they've got the body. And then the body will scream at it saying, you forgot about me. I'm giving you some pains. I'm giving you a cold. I'm giving you something so that you'll know you got to stay in your body and not leave it. So that's a challenge for Sagittarius, is to stay grounded. It feels so good to be high on life. So it's hard sometimes. All of you that are out there, I'm sure you've had Jupiter transits, or some of you have Jupiter or Sag in your charts. Tameshka has Neptune and Sun in Sagittarius, she knows. So it's easy to get into bubbles and then the bubble bursts and you come down to reality. Some Sagittarians are more balanced than that, more grounded than that, but not always. They'll go back and forth on that kind of thing quite often. Let me take us a little bit further, and then we're going to bring on Candace very shortly. So we have the Sun is in Sagittarius on Wednesday. Mars is in Sagittarius on Friday. So they both will be pretty close to each other. Then there's a full moon. I'm taking us a little bit ahead. There's a full moon on the 27th of November. On December 6th, Neptune goes direct. On December 30th, Jupiter goes direct. Most everything will be direct at that time, but here's the glitch. Mercury goes direct. When does it go direct? On the 1st. That's not the glitch. The glitch is it's retrograde. Mercury goes retrograde on December 12th. It goes back direct on the 1st of January. Great time for it to go back direct, 1st of January. Happy New Year. Mercury's direct. So Mercury will be retrograde from the 12th, which is the same day as the new moon in Sag, by the way, on the 12th of December. It'll go retrograde. Remember, during this retrograde time, winter solstice will happen on the 21st. And then when Jupiter goes direct and Mercury goes direct, Jupiter on the 30th of December, Mercury on the 1st of January 2024, every planet at that time will be direct except for Uranus. And Uranus will go direct later in the month, like on the 20th, I believe. Anyway, toward the end of the month, 27th. Uranus goes direct on the 27th. Then everything will be direct for a while. All systems go. So that's enough, Leo. We've heard enough about the planets and the events that are coming. Now it's time to bring on Candace. So let me just give you a little bit of a short bio on Candace. So Candace is an author. She's a story healer and a paranormalist. She weaves, and this is true about her, she weaves words into wider realities. She is a former business journalist who knew since age 12 that she wanted to write a paranormal novel and spent decades researching arcane topics. This ignited her passion for alternative spirituality, leading her to become a Sunan story healer. We'll talk about that with her too. Sunan, S-U-N-A-N, storyteller, story healer. Her profound spiritual transformation resulted in the Stone Slayer paranormal fiction series, which we're going to spend much time on today talking about that. And that paranormal fiction series, The Stone Slayer, is a fictionalized autobiography based on 4 of her own past lives. Tell me that's not interesting. And we'll be getting into that. So let me also say, I'll say it now, I'll say it at the end of the interview too. Her website is www.candace, C-A-N-D-A-C-E, Lynn, L-Y-N-N, Talmadge, Talmadge.com. I'll give you that again when we get to the end of the interview. So without further ado, as they say, let's bring on Candace. Hi, Candace.
Hello, Leo. Thank you for inviting me to your show. And I have to say, I was tickled by your description of Sagittarius because my late wife was a Sagittarian. And that was so true about her, about being so far out. I mean, sometimes Jana would be so far out and she would make the mistake of trying to drink a sip of coffee and she would inhale her coffee. So that happened more than once, and I always know that she'd been out of body when she did that. So that was fun. Yeah.
Candace, tell us about when you were 12 years old and you started getting into what your future was going to be at that time. Talk about that.
Well, when I was 12 years old, well, actually, at age 11, I had, I guess, what you would call a prophetic dream. And it really ties in, Leo, with what you were just talking about about all the changes that are coming in 2024 and beyond, because we're now really in the age of Aquarius.
Yes.
And basically, in this dream, I was 11. I just turned 11, and this is I guess the summer of 65. And I was in my dream. I was standing in the field. It was very dark. There was one tree in a tilled field, and the stars were overhead, just so brilliant. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, we're going to have to start all over again and redo it. And it was just a very profound glimpse into the unfortunate human tendency to have to re-experience things over and over again until we finally get it.
So true.
So fast forward, I'm 12, and I had this really interesting experience, another prophetic dream, but it was instantly prophetic. On a Friday night, early in the morning, I dreamed that my mother and I were going to the hospital to visit a friend of my mother's who had terminal cancer. We'd done this several times. We'd gone to visit her, and my mom always took me with her. Well, in my dream, we got to the nurse's station, and the nurse smiled sadly and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, you can't see Mrs. Smith. She died at 3 this morning." Well, I woke up, got a little bummed, went, because it was Saturday morning, so it was my job to empty the dishwasher and set the table, and I was busy doing that. The phone rang, and then not long after that, my mom came into the kitchen, and she was, her eyes were red and everything, and she said, "Mrs. Smith died at 3 this morning."
Wow. Yeah.
And I was like, da 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 da, the Twilight Zone.
Yes.
I didn't say anything. I just, what can you say? All right. But I knew at that point there was things may not happen quite like the rational and mental and physical want you to believe. All right. There's a different reality, what I call a wider reality.
Yes.
And so about that time too, I was deep into The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. And my generation, of course, a later generation got into the Harry Potter series. But my generation was The Lord of the Rings. And I realized that, yes, I wanted to write something like this, but I didn't want to do a typical Dungeons and Dragons and swords and quests fantasy. I wanted it to be something different, but I didn't quite know what it was. And that's why I spent all this time researching it. Because I thought, like everybody else, if you live out of your mental and physical, then the only way to get new information is to do research, listen to experts, read books, all that kind of stuff. That's how the mental body gets new information.
Right.
But there's this whole other side of yourself called your emotional body and your spiritual body. And when you admit to having that and integrate it into your being and try to live out of your whole self, not just part of yourself, the spiritual body has these wonderful things. It's called soul senses. Now, some people refer to them as psychic senses. I don't care. Pick your favorite label. But the soul senses give you access to non-physical information about other people, but especially about yourself, your past lives, your emotional state, the beliefs that are hidden from you that really drive you to feel and behave the way you do. That's not always apparent to the conscious mind. In fact, usually it's just hidden from the conscious mind for specific reasons. And as a Sunon story healer, that's what I go and help myself and other people find and release and resolve. So all that came together, and I had started to try to write my fiction series, which I haven't published yet, by the way. It's coming. If you go to my website, you'll see a place for fiction, and you can read a little bit about it, but it will be coming probably in 2024. Any rate, it all came together, and then I found myself I was in trouble, but I couldn't consciously express what kind of trouble I was in. But when the patient is ready, the healer appears. And that's when Jana came into my life in the summer of 1986. And I went through Sunan story healing for the first time with Jana as my, guide. And I met my spirit guides. I did all sorts of, it was a marvelous time for me. And that helped me begin the process of finding and reclaiming and living out of all I truly am. And Leo is talking about conflict. Well, guess what? All that outer conflict is the physical manifestation of and reflection of the inner conflict we have within. If we have problems living with other people who are different because, well, they're the demon, it's because all of ourselves, that unity within a group, we have very different parts of our being. Our mental being is one way, our physical being is another way, our emotional and spiritual beings are different parts of it. But they are parts of the whole, right? They belong together, united.
Exactly.
And the problem is most of us don't even know we've got this inner war or inner conflict.
Let me interrupt you just for 1 second. What I've been preaching lately is that when you look at an astrology chart and you see all the planets in the different signs, it's just what you're saying. Every planet, every sign, every location of a planet is a different part of ourselves. It's a different voice inside of ourselves. So when you're working with astrology, you can identify and honor every part that's different than you and then work toward unifying, just like you're saying. 'Cause I agree with you 100%. That's how it works. Internal is what gives us our external.
Exactly. So, and I want to talk about working with Leo because he has this wonderful way. So when we started working together back in the summer of 2020, one of the first things he says was, right at the top of your chart, your north node is Pluto. Now that represents an authority figure, and you've got to make your peace with this authority figure. And I was like, I have no idea what he's talking about. I don't get it. So we continued to work together, and he kept mentioning this and mentioning this. And so it started to make sense, or things started to break open about in the fall of 2021, because I had a minor procedure at the eye doctor's office. And of course, the doctors tend to stack you all together and do a whole bunch of people at the same time. So you have to wait. So while I was waiting for that procedure, I just got totally crazed. I mean, my heart rate accelerated, my blood pressure spiked. I got anxious, and it was way out of proportion to what was really going to happen. Because when I finally did it, it was a 3-minute nothing burger. I mean, nothing. Very simple procedure. So I finally realized, because I'd done anxiety and all that kind of stuff all my life. I mean, I was a queen of anxiety. So I finally said, this is not me. Something within me. This is not me. And that's when those quote unquote authority figures overplayed their hand. So again, I talked to Leo about this, and we kept coming at it from different avenues. And long into 2022, I was talking with Leo, and suddenly my emotional body woke up. She finally got it, because I have a very strong emotional body, but that's what happens when you create equality and balance between all 4 parts of your being. Every part contributes from its strength. And the emotional body's strength is guarding your own free will and your own autonomy and your own power and authority. That's the emotional body's role in your being. So my emotional body, who I see as a very tall Zulu woman with a spear, got up and started, this is toward the end of my talk with Leo, and she got up, and that was on a Friday, and I spent all weekend watching her going throughout my energy. And she finally found one of the authority figures and started chunking them out of my energy. There were 2, not 1. And we found the second one 6 weeks later. But I'm not sure that would have happened quite as fast if Leo hadn't kept reminding me, you really, really need, it's important to you to recognize that you are the authority and deal with this figure that's at the top of your chart claiming the authority. So I finally found a way to do it in my own unique Sunan story healing way, because that's how it happens. And it was just wonderful. It was so liberating, so freeing. Well, then another year passes, and Leo and I are still talking about the north node of my chart, the top of my chart. And, Leo finally said, hey, you know what? You better make friends with Pluto now. Because, yes, you've reclaimed your authority. You've kicked out the bad energy, with the psychic vampires or whatever you want to call it. I don't care. The psychic leeches, you kick them out, but you want to make friends now with Pluto. So I said, okay, I'll do that. So I did a meditation, and in Sunat story healing, when you meditate, you go to your heart chakra, which is where all of self ideally lives in harmony and cooperation. So all of me was there. We all started talking, and I just sort of said to Pluto, please come on into my heart chakra. I'd like to meet you and get to know you. So up from the ground, so appropriately, I have a beach in my heart chakra, and up from the sand came Pluto. And we sat and talked, and it was wonderful. And he said, I was there in part to help you deal with those, what I call gaslighters, those false authority figures. I said, I realize that now, but I didn't always understand. And he said, okay. So then he kind of disappeared from our heart chakra, and we were all still sort of sitting around talking and everything. And then suddenly he appears again, and he brings every kind of earth gem and jewel you could possibly imagine. Precious stones, precious ores, semi-precious stones. And I just took one look at all that beauty, and I just squealed and said, well, everybody, let's spread it all around so we can all enjoy it. He kind of looked at me like, okay. It's so funny because, I have palm trees, and I have a fountain now, with the flow of my love energy into my heart chakra. And so we spread it, now I have ridiculous crabs with precious jewels encrusted on their shells. It's just ridiculous. And my trees, all the palm trees on my beach, they all have precious jewels wrapped around their trunks because they kind of like that. They like their bling. So just this incredible wealth and riches. And then I find out, that Pluto is not only the guardian of the underworld, he's also the guardian of all the mineral wealth underground.
Exactly.
So, it was the most fun. We all had all of my selves, they're represented as different parts of my being, like my emotional body and my physical body and my mental body and my spiritual body. And all those aspects of me were running out and blinging everything up and oohing and awing over the pretty rocks. So that we just had so much fun, but it was a wonderful thing. It kicked off a whole bunch of healing and growth for me.
Pluto, you explained it so well. And, Pluto also, besides what you said about the minerals and things, it's also the planet of, it takes you to your darkest night. And then from your darkest night, you have a rebirth. And that's when all the riches come. It's during the rebirth that happens. So yeah, that was beautiful how you went through that. Would you now tell us, Candace, about Sunan?
Well, Sunan is an approach to healing that focuses on the emotional body. Because in Sunan, the origin of all disease is dis-ease within the four parts of self. But there's a specific thing that you look for, or two things you look for when you undergo Sunan story healing. And these are self-judgments and vows or promises that you make to yourself. Because the energy of consciousness, the energy of all our being, is meant to flow freely through our chakras and back out again. This is the flow of our own soul awareness. This is the flow of the unconditional love of our divine parents, our mother, father, God. And that flow of unconditional love is what sustains us. But the problem is when we have self-judgments and vows in our own consciousness, that flow of love is diminished or stymied or whatever. It gets blocked and stuck. And we also don't evolve, because what we're meant to do is evolve and grow and feel things and release them and let them go and bring in more experiences, more feelings. And it is always a free flow, ideally, but it's not. It gets stuck, and people have no conscious idea, I certainly didn't, that they've made these self-judgments up against themselves and vows, promises to self, and they are very destructive because they don't allow your consciousness to flow freely throughout your energy field. So that's what we go look for. We look for, judgments you've made against yourself. They hide out and they get stuck in the magnetic energy of the emotional body. And vows that you've made to yourself, they also get in the magnetic energy of the emotional body. And you can't mentally free yourselves from them, and you can't even spiritually, through visualization or feeling. You must go to the emotional body and find out the story behind why you made this decision and self-judgment about yourself, or this promise to yourself. And that's when you can make a new decision. It doesn't serve me anymore. It's too limiting now. I know better. Because again, it only freezes a part of you, but that part of you still influences the rest of you and your experiences, both in a physical body and not in a physical body. Those self-judgments and vows to self influence the decisions you make about how to reincarnate in your life. There are the sort of subconscious drivers, if you will, of how you feel about yourself and your behavior. And if you've noticed repeating destructive patterns in your life, same issue, different person, same issue, different employer, same issue, different spouse.
Right.
Living out of are self-judgments and vows that you really have grown beyond. And all these patterns are trying to show you and get your attention.
So Candace, part of working it through then is the storytelling, right? Helps you do it. So take us now to your writings and your books, and how the storytellings that you use in those books has helped you. I know there's the past lives, the reincarnation, that's a part of that. That's part of these stories. Tell our viewers about the stories and about the book, how the book encapsulates those stories and how that's helped you, how it can help others. And tell us a little bit about the books too. Hope I didn't give you too much there.
Well, again, when you're in Sunan story healing, you don't make these decisions about self in a vacuum. There's a story behind it. You go and find that story and you retell it and you change it so that now it's positive, it's self-loving. I mean, one of the reasons, Leo, we were talking about how everybody seems to be at each other's throat. That's because they're living out of those self-judgments. Well, I'm not sure now whether life imitated art or art imitated life or what. But as I began writing both my fiction and my nonfiction, I always find myself drawn to healing and the need for healing and what we can do to heal ourselves, because we're all interconnected. And when one person heals, everybody benefits.
Yes.
Maybe not directly, maybe not consciously, but we all do.
Yes.
So as I was going through all these things, with Leo and my sessions with Leo, and making my way through the grief of losing my wife to cancer in 2020, I realized that there was a missing element to my fiction series, and I renamed it And as soon as I did, that element sprang forth and the story poured out. And really the forthcoming series is based on now what I realize are 4 of my past lives. And as I healed those past lives, because they were very significant to me and they have caused me significant heartache. Well, not anymore. They're healed. All right. There's nothing, but as far as I know, there's nothing hanging fire. Something else could come up. But a lot of those issues, and when I say resolved, I mean the pattern breaks up, the pain goes away, and you feel freer and lighter, and more of you is in that present that all the sages talk about, all the Eastern traditions of be in the present. Well, the reason people find it so hard to be in the moment or the present is because their energy, parts of their energy, are stuck in the past due to self-judgment and the vows. You can't be in the present if your energy has if your emotions are unresolved from the past. It's not possible. So as you heal yourself, as I healed myself, my writing got better and better and more free flowing, and more of me is in the present now. And that is very freeing and empowering and healing. Because another one of the things that you do in Sunan story healing is you give people back their power. Actually, the people take it. Because when we judge against self or we make vows to self, we hand over our power. I mean, by that, I mean pieces of our energy consciousness. We hand them over to other souls. The problem is they can't use it and we need it. So when we take back those pieces of our souls and energies, our power comes back to us. Our authority comes back to us. We feel stronger. We feel more able to handle what the day brings. And part of the reason that people in the Piscean age wanted somebody else to make the decision is that they literally did not have the power. They'd given away so much of their own power in their energy that they didn't have the wherewithal to make those decisions for themselves.
Makes sense. Candace, can you give us some examples from your books of you in a past life and how that past life helped you to let go of stuck places inside yourself because of the story of the past life of any of your characters?
Any of my characters? Well, I think I'll go back to the earliest character in the series whom you meet through kind of past life recollections, and her name was Shargat. And she was of mixed race. She was part Toltec, part Borean. And her father was an iron worker, and he made beautiful knives and tools and plows and all those things that you need to live. And you don't have, modern manufacturing. You need someone to forge them. So he did. And in that lifetime, Shargat's father, Carrick, found a great stone. I mean, the Boreans, he lived with the Boreans. He was a very unusual man. Most of the Toltecs kept to themselves. But Carrick took his young daughter, Isolet, his older daughter, and lived with the Boreans and ended up marrying a Borean woman named Michelle. And I was Michelle's daughter and Carrick's daughter. And Carrick was fascinated by this huge stone, which the Boreans called the Arc Stone. It was just a big, multicolored stone, and there was a huge energy radiating from this stone, a very powerful energy, and Carrick could sense that. So he went to the Borean village elders and he said, "Hey, would you mind if I took small pieces of this stone? I think I can do things with them and make better tools and perhaps even things that we haven't even thought of." So he did. And that basically developed into a riff because his brother-in-law, one of them, didn't like the fact, A, that Carrick had married Michelle, and B, that Carrick seemed to be, the favorite of the older brother who was the village chief. So anyway, all sorts of personal dynamics and inter-family conflict. But Shargat got a piece of that stone, a green piece, And she intuitively knew that it would help people heal their physical wounds. So she would go among the village and she would travel in her, she just teenage, maybe 15 or so. And she would travel and use the stone and heal people. If someone fell from a tree and broke a limb, she would go there and use the stone and heal them with the stone. And and what happened was, of course, that all sorts of mischief ensued, and her father was murdered, and she eventually lost her life to her uncle's machinations. She made all sorts of vows to self, and in undoing those vows, I experienced a lot of healing and self-growth. And I also found, hey, this is part of the story, which I hadn't realized. This is part of my fiction series, which I hadn't realized. So now it's in the fiction series. So it's, my guides decades ago, my spirit guides were saying, hey, you should become a Sunan story healer, because those past lives, they're really great. They're really great grist for stories. And I was like, all right, I'll do it. And that's true. And what they said was perfectly true. I mean, I cannot believe how rich of a story and a tale that I have found in my lives, going from Shargat to a boy named Andros, to a woman named Helen, and then to Helen's granddaughter, Marina. And they all are portrayed in that series and what happens to them. And yes, they have that green stone, and there's a demon pursuing them, as he was with Shargat, because he wants that stone. So
you are all four of those characters that you just mentioned. Those are all your past lives.
they're my past lives on this planet. Yes.
Can you give us an idea of time frame for each one of those characters? By the way, we're going to bring Deborah on pretty soon, everybody. Give us, give us a sense of like the time frame of each one of those characters
Well, very, very ancient. I don't know. I'm not sure. And I mean, Leo, that is the question I've been asking myself for decades. When did this take place in terms of our years, our past?
Yes.
I just know that all of these lives occurred before that quote unquote biblical flood. All right.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. In fact, the story that I talk about is how lack of love, shall you say, desire for power and wealth and every other consideration notwithstanding, people destroyed themselves. An island destroyed itself and flooded the rest of the world. So, I mean, that's why in Tolkien, I was always drawn to the Silmarillion and the story of the Númenóreans, who, in Tolkien's telling, broke some sort of spiritual law and were punished by their island destroyed. Well, in my understanding of that is it wasn't divine punishment. It was the people themselves going through their own cycle.
Oh,
So,
very interesting. A lot of people believe that the flood happened, everyone doesn't, but a lot of people believe the flood happened like about 10,000 BC, 10 to 12,000 BC. So all your stories are prior to that flood.
all my incarnations are prior to that flood, and I've always known that the traditional archaeology narrative of and anthropological narrative of how civilization began, I've always known that wasn't quite the story, because civilization, like everything, goes in cycles. All right, we have daily cycles, weekly cycles, monthly cycles, yearly cycles, seasonal cycles. And just like that, human history has been in cycles. We rise up, we get very sophisticated, and we don't honor the heart and our connection to the divine. And when we stop honoring that,
don't you feel it's a non-honoring of the feminine in a way?
it's a non-honoring of the emotional and spiritual. Yes, it's a non-honoring of the feminine. And that is, you can't live out of half of your being. You can't be just a mental and physical being. You are a mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional being, and all parts of you have equal validity, just as all peoples have equal validity and are loved by our
Yes,
divine parents.
that's right. That's right. And part of this age of Aquarius is the return of the feminine. Deborah will talk a little bit about that in a little while, but it's partly about the return of the feminine on our Earth, because, as you so wisely have been commenting, the heart and the cycles and the inner world, the soul of life, is just denied by our culture or made into light trivia, as if it's nothing important. What could be more important than our hearts and our souls? So I'm so glad that we're bringing that back as part of the Age of Aquarius. Candace, please tell everybody your website again, how they can get a hold of you, and how they can get the books to read. They're not available yet, or are they?
Okay, the fiction series is forthcoming, but I have 2 nonfiction books that also talk about all of this healing. One is focused on the afterlife, one is just focused on emotional and spiritual healing resolution through the Sunan storytelling method. And just go to my website, you'll find them there. And again, it's Candace, Candace, Lynn, Lynn, Talmadge, Talmadge.com. And all the links there. You can contact me there. You can look at my works and even read a little bit about the forthcoming fiction series.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. It's just wonderful how you've got this ability to touch on all these places that people don't go to. Like you said, the alternative spirituality, and I think that's truly what you have been involved in, and it's beautiful. Thank you so much for being on. I know we'll have you back again if you'll come back.
I'd love to come back. Thank you, Leo.
So take care of yourself. And I think, Deborah, are you ready to come on now? Yes? Okay. Hi, Deb.
Hey there, Leo. Wow, that was awesome. I love hearing about the Sunan healing, Candace. That really fascinated me with the work that I do. So that was really interesting hearing both of you.
Deborah, you do past life work with people. Do you want to say a little bit about that, since that's a topic we're talking about today?
Sure. I do past life regression sessions where I take people back in time. It's like into a relaxed, you could say hypnotic state, but I call it a deep state of relaxation. And I guide them back into earlier times in this life for like healing their childhood wounds and earlier wounds in this life. And then also going back to past lives. And as I'm sure Candace can attest, it's really amazing sometimes when someone like goes to a past life and they get something that is connected to. So when I do past life regression, it's always connected to a wound or an issue in someone's life where they can't quite figure it out or they can't quite resolve it. And you need to go to that deeper state to access, what's behind that wound or that stuckness in your life or whatever it is. And I've had clients have big just shifts, major shifts after they either remembered something from their childhood, something came back, they brought, and it's like soul retrieval actually. When you do a past life regression or a child regression, you're retrieving a part of your soul back. And that's what happens. And it's like, it can be like so liberating. I had one of my biggest experiences with that was a woman that came to me years ago who had a phobia of worms, and earthworms, and she was just petrified. Like in the springtime, she couldn't go outside, she couldn't be near the earth, near the grass, anything, because she was just petrified, and it really affected her life. And she had tried everything, and so she came to me. And in I think it was 1 or 2 sessions, we got to this past life where she was buried alive and there were worms crawling
Oh God.
all over her. And when she got that memory of that past life, her phobia went away because she knew what it was connected to, and she knew there was no danger in her life now. And I've seen so many people reclaim like gifts, gifts and from other lives that they want to bring back now, and that's been transformational for them when they can like maybe find a lifetime when they were a certain kind of healer, and they can bring the energy of that life and that time when they were a healer back. So
How can people get the service from you? What do they need to do? And do you do like a series with people, or just one time, or how does it work?
it really depends on the person. I mean, with a lot of my ongoing clients, will do regressions at different times in their therapy, because I do a lot of long term, um, more spiritually oriented therapy, that psychotherapy. It's not traditional because I use a lot of healing modalities, because I use flower and gem essences, and I do past life regression. So it can be in that context, or sometimes people come to me just for a regression.
Yeah.
It might be a session or two. It could be longer, depending on what it is that they want to uncover of their past lives.
How about
And
if they
like,
just want to come in and get a past life reading, period? There's nothing specific that they're working on, at least that they know of.
well, the way I was trained was that you focus on an issue, and
Okay.
it's not a reading. It's a regression. A reading's different. That's a reading's when someone tells you what your past lives were, which I'm sure that's valid, but to me, it's more empowering for a person to actually go back to that life and see it themselves.
Yeah, that makes
And
sense.
they get to go inside, and then they get to heal. They get to heal something in that lifetime. They get to bring a part of them that they lost back with them. It changes their life. Not that a reading wouldn't too, but it's different. It's very
No,
different.
that makes a lot of sense. I'm glad you clarified that. Yeah, if a person's going back themselves. So you're kind of like almost like a hypnotic or a guided meditation or something like that you're doing with people, right?
Well, it is hypnosis in that, to me, really hypnosis is taking you into a deep
Yeah.
state of relaxation.
Yes.
So you can, so your mind isn't just thinking. You're
Right.
you're going deeper. You're going to another realm so that you can go back and you can see it. It's, I mean, it's profound. Same with, and guided meditations are profound too.
So how do people get a hold of you? How do people get a hold of you for this to happen?
Well, yeah, I just want to say one more thing.
Yeah.
The other thing that's really empowering and powerful is, hey, Judy Ann,
Hi,
is
Julianne.
you can also do what I call shamanic dream work, where I do this with people where I guide them back into a dream that they've had, and they can heal something within that dream. And it's very profound. It's like
Oh,
kind of
that's
like
good.
a guided meditation, kind of a regression. I have a client right now who has had nightmares her entire life, and we're getting closer to her doing some of those sessions because she needs to like heal and change the storyline. It kind of connects with what Candace was talking about
Exactly.
with the
Exactly.
story. It's like,
Yes.
and our dreams, our dreams are similar. So I guess we've gone off on a tangent, but how people can
Okay.
reach me for a session
Yeah.
is, you can go to my website, which is Gaia Sophia, templeoftheheart.com, or you can email me at Alelia, which is my spiritual name, Elelia, at Gaia Sophia, templeoftheheart.com. So what I was going to talk
I'm going to leave us now. I'm going to leave us now so you can take the floor here, Deb, and do your
Okay.
thing.
Okay. Thanks. So I'm going to move more quickly through what I was going to talk about today for time's sake. But I just wanted to bring our awareness that we're in the middle of the throat chakra gateway in the cycle of Venus. And those of you that have been following our show know that I've been talking about the cycle of Venus which is connected with the descent and ascent of Inanna to the underworld and back, and how Inanna goes through the different gateways like the chakras. So right now, Venus is in her morning star phase. And when the last gateway was when the waning crescent moon joined with Venus in the morning sky before dawn, that brought us into this gateway. So we've gone through the crown chakra, the third eye, and now we're in the throat chakra gateway of Venus. And the new cycle began in September when we started a whole new 19-month cycle. So right now we're at the throat chakra, as my throat is kind of scratchy right now. So I just wanted to bring our awareness to the throat chakra gateway. And like clockwork, I notice like right before the gateway, I'll start having issues around my communication or my throat chakra, whatever that gateway is. And so you might just want to think back. I think the gateway was on the 10th. So the next gateway is the heart chakra gateway, which is on December 9th. So we're kind of in the middle. And so this is a time, I just want to bring this into your awareness, to heal issues around communication, self-expression, speaking your truth, with honesty and integrity. And, what things you can do right now to open up your throat chakra are, chanting, singing, doing a mantra. Let's see what else. You can also anoint your throat chakra with, there's certain oils that are really good for the throat chakra, like lavender and spearmint and copaiba, and any of the blue essential oils, if you have any, are really good to anoint your throat chakra. There's also flower essences. I work a lot with flower essences with my clients, and trumpet vine and larch. Larch is a Bach flower essence, and trumpet vine is Flower Essence Society of North America, but there's also other companies where you can get that. I actually have made that myself too. But those are two flower essences that help open up your throat chakra, and also iris, the flower iris, which is really good for like creative inspiration. So just notice what themes are coming up for you around your throat chakra, communication, self-expression, and just really honor that and do everything you can to open your throat. You can also do yoga asanas that help you open your throat. The lion one pose is one where you go like that it opens your throat up. And always remember too, our throats and our hips and our pelvis are connected. So you might become aware of that. So I'm trying to see if there's anything else. And listening to the sound of the throat chakra. This is a throat chakra crystal singing bowl. And it helps bring you into, and it brings healing to the throat chakra. And there's also solfeggio frequencies, the 741 solfeggio frequency. You can find this on YouTube, or you can download probably on, some of the music channels like Spotify or Pandora, and also online. You can download certain healing tones for your throat that you can listen to and also say. And there's also the seed bija mantra for the throat, which is hum, hum. So that's something you can do too, is chant that tone of the throat to help open your throat. And just do whatever you can to open your creativity, express yourself in new ways. And what else was I going to say? Sing, chant, tone, use your voice as much as you can, write, because that's another way to express yourself. So during this time until December 9th, really focus on your throat chakra. And the other things I was going to talk about, I'm going to talk about quickly, is with all that Leo was talking about, but about what's going on in the world. And I know from my clients They are going through, so many people are going through so much right now because we're feeling what's going on in the world. And I can tell from my clients' dreams too, they're like tuning in. And I think either Leo or someone I know's client had a dream of being in Gaza. And one of my clients this week was telling me her dreams, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like what's going on in Gaza right now. So people are really going through a lot right now. And what is it that we can do to help us through these times? And there were two things that I wanted to talk about. One was remembering the big picture. And like Leo's been talking about, it's so helpful to know, because I've had so many of my clients the last few weeks are like, very emotional, really scared, concerned about the earth and what we're going through. Obviously, we all know that we can feel what's coming. But what's so important is to remember that we're in this huge transition on the earth from one age to the next. We're actually in the Aquarian age now, and we're in the birth canal. We're in an initiation. And to just remember that and to hold the big picture that we are moving into the new earth. And that's what we need to focus on. Focus on the new earth as much as we can, not to deny or rise above the suffering that we see in the world, because we want to have our hearts open so we can feel compassion and empathy for those that are suffering, and so that we can serve in any way we can to help those people through our prayers, through our meditations, through our healing offerings, whatever ways we are here to help and serve. But to also remember that this is part of the transition, and we're going to get through this, praying we get through this. These are the times. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We all came here right now to be here, and we all have a piece of the puzzle. So it's important to remember that. What is your puzzle? And the cards that I pulled for today go into alignment with that. And I'm going to get to that in a second. And the other piece of wisdom I want to impart about these times is to stay out of polarization, to stay out of duality, and to really stay in the middle, as neutral as you can, not to take one side or the other. And this is good in all of life. When there's something with a person, an argument or a conflict, or even within yourself, to stay as neutral in the middle ground, in the 0 point, in that place of balance and equilibrium and peace within you, to see and to hold that place, and to also stay in the heart of compassion. So I wanted to just move into the cards I pulled. And it's so funny. I pulled two of the same cards I pulled last time for all of you. And the first one I pulled was play. And I pulled this a few times already. This is from Work Your Light Oracle by Rebecca Campbell. But so this is reminding us that through all that we're going through, as hard as it may be, when you see other people suffering so much, that we need to also find time to play and to have laughter, because laughter is a sacred medicine. And we need to remember to care for our inner children, our inner child during these times, and all the children, and that innocence of the child. We need that now. So that was the first card I pulled, was a reminder that we also need to celebrate and see the goodness that's also here on our planet right now, as everything is dismantling. And maybe that's part of the celebration too, celebrating that the old world, the old patriarchy, that we are now unplugging from the patriarchy. There's a book about that. And we can celebrate that and send our love and our prayers also to everyone that's suffering, and hold the vision that we're moving from this time of suffering into a new world where there's peace and equilibrium, and love is the guiding force, the guiding energy. And then the second card I pulled was the Priestess card. And I pulled this last time too, that I did this. And this one is all about looking at how are you being called to lead or to stand up and take your place? Where are you being called right now with all that's going on in our world? And it's also a reminder to tell our story, because as we tell our own personal story, like Candace talked about, as we share our story, our journey, it serves others, because then others don't feel so alone. And we start to feel that we're all in this together. So that's also part of this Priestess card. And, the Priestess is dedicated to her path of service, to leadership. And so just looking at, where are you being called? Who is your tribe and how can you serve right now during these times of great need? Because it's times of great need now. And we all need to step forth into who we are, be who we are, and step forth with our gifts so we can truly help in whatever ways we can in this great transition. And the last card I pulled from this deck, I have one other card that is really wonderful. The last card is called the Initiation. And this is a reminder that we are in a huge time of initiation, and to remember that. And that there is, if you look through this, there's all this darkness here. We're walking through this darkness now. There's storms up here, but look what's here. Through the initiation is a whole new world. It's the water. It's this beautiful place. And so this card is reminding us that we're in a rite of passage. We're in initiation, and we're going to get through to the other side.
Like a light at the end of the tunnel. It almost looks like that last card.
The light at the end of the tunnel. And then the last card I pulled, I don't think I have enough time to do a meditation. I wanted to, but this last card is from a different deck called Work Your Light. And this card is called Telepathy of Terra Matter. And the message of this card is all about connecting with Mother Earth. And during these times of turmoil on our planet, it's going to be so crucial for us to really attune very deeply with our mother. Our earth is our mother, and also our father. In Egyptian times, the earth was considered father, Geb.
Yeah, that's right.
But it's also our mother. So being as attuned as we can to our mother, listening to our mother, receiving her energies, doing meditations where you feel her energy coming up through your feet, and receiving telepathic messages from Mother Earth. That was the message of this card. And also,
tell her, I'd like to. We have to finish it off in a minute.
Yeah, and just connecting with that divine feminine creatress energy of the earth, because the earth is a regenerating energy, a creative regenerating energy. And during these times when there is so much going on the earth, that our earth mother can support us and help us with our life purpose, bring us messages, bring us energy, life force energy through our bodies, and nurture and nourish us. So that's my sharing for today.
That was really helpful, especially all the ways that you're bringing people together on the things that you had to say during times that are tough. So thanks, Deb. And we'll be back in 2 weeks. What is that, Deb? 25th?
December 2nd, I think.
December 2nd. Thank you very much. We'll be back on December 2nd. And if you want to get a hold of me, write to Solus, SOULUS at AOL.com or LeoKnightonTallarico.com website. And Deb?
Oh, my website is GaiaSophiaTempleoftheHeart.com. and Elelia, Elelia at GaiaSophiaTempleOfTheHeart.com. And the other one little thing I want to say is coming into community and doing ceremonies and healing and prayers and meditations are really important right now too, during these times.
Makes sense. If you want to get a hold of Candace, Candace, Lynn, Lynn, Talmadge, TALMADGE.com. And thank you again, Candace, for being on today. Really appreciated it. And so that's the end. We'll see you guys in a couple of weeks.
And Judy Ann said the only time has changed is that Arizona's in a different time zone because we keep our clocks the same.
Right.
So she just asked about the time. So
it is different. It is different for everyone because we don't change.
Everybody else. It is different for everyone else. So sorry if anyone had to miss part of this.
Yeah, very true. Take care, everybody. Much love to all of you. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.